Enter Beom-seok. Beom-seok is new to the school. He's a transfer student, and the circumstances of his transfer aren't immediately clear. What we know is that he's trying to find his place in this new environment. He's trying to fit in. He's trying to make friends. He's vulnerable in the way that new students are vulnerable. He's isolated. He doesn't know anyone. He doesn't have allies yet. And Yeong-bin sees this vulnerability like a shark smells blood in the water. Yeong-bin approaches Beom-seok and makes him an offer. It's a simple offer, but it's incredibly seductive, especially for someone in Beom-seok's position. Yeong-bin tells him that if Beom-seok helps him ruin Si-eun's academic record, if he helps sabotage Si-eun's grades and his standing in the school, then Yeong-bin will help him establish himself socially. He'll make Beom-seok part of his group. He'll give him friends. He'll give him protection. He'll give him status. For someone like Beom-seok, who's just transferred to a new school and is desperately trying to find his place, this offer is almost impossible to refuse. It's a shortcut to belonging. It's a promise of acceptance and friendship and security, all wrapped up in a simple agreement to help sabotage one nerdy student who probably won't even fight back. What's brilliant about this plot device is that it reveals something crucial about Yeong-bin's character. He's not just a thug who uses his fists to solve problems. He's intelligent. He understands psychology. He understands what people want. He knows how to identify vulnerability and exploit it. He knows how to manipulate people into doing what he wants. This makes him far more dangerous than a simple brute. This is a villain with strategy. This is a villain who understands the human psyche. So the plan is set in motion. Beom-seok agrees to help Yeong-bin sabotage Si-eun's grades. They're going to cheat. They're going to manipulate the system. They're going to destroy Si-eun's academic record and, in the process, destroy the one thing that Si-eun has built his entire identity around. Now, here's the thing about Si-eun's social isolation. It means he has zero allies. He has no one to turn to when things get difficult. He has no friends who'll fight for him. He has no social network to fall back on. He stands completely alone. And when Yeong-bin and Beom-seok put their plan into action, Si-eun initially seems like he's in serious trouble. He seems like he's going to lose everything. But this is where the show makes its central point clear. This is where we start to understand who Si-eun really is beneath the surface of the meek, quiet, studious student. Si-eun doesn't panic. He doesn't cry for help. He doesn't look for protection from someone stronger than him. Instead, he does something very different. He starts observing. He starts analyzing. He starts understanding the game that's being played against him. And more importantly, he starts realizing something critical about power dynamics in his school. The realization goes something like this. Yeong-bin doesn't have power because he's the strongest person in the school. There are probably people stronger than him. Yeong-bin has power because of relationships. He has power because people respect him. He has power because people want something from him or are afraid of what he'll do to them if they don't cooperate with him. His power is social and psychological, not physical. This means that his power is fragile. It's dependent on maintaining a certain image and a certain set of relationships. It's dependent on other people believing in his dominance. And if you can undermine that belief, you can undermine his entire power base. Si-eun, on the other hand, has nothing to lose. He has no social status to protect. He has no friends who'll abandon him if his reputation changes. He has no image to maintain. He's already at the bottom of the social hierarchy. He's already isolated. He's already written off by most of the school. This means he can do things that other students can't do. He can take risks that they can't take. He can be honest in ways that they can't be honest. He can go against the social grain in ways that would destroy another student's life but barely registers for him. And so begins the psychological warfare. Si-eun starts fighting back. But he doesn't fight back with his fists. He fights back with information. He fights back with strategy. He fights back with the careful manipulation of the social dynamics that Yeong-bin has built his entire power structure on. The title of the show becomes clear at this point. It's called Weak Hero, not because Si-eun is literally weak, though he is physically weak compared to other students, but because the show is asking a fundamental question. What does it mean to be weak? Is weakness physical? Is weakness social? Or is weakness something more fundamental? Is weakness the inability to adapt? Is it the inability to see your opponent's moves before they're made? Is it being trapped by your own ego and your own needs? By that measure, Yeong-bin is the weak one. He's weak because he needs validation. He's weak because he needs other people to fear him. He's weak because he can't function without a certain level of social dominance. He's addicted to power in a way that makes him predictable, that makes him vulnerable. Si-eun, on the other hand, is strong in ways that aren't immediately obvious. He's strong because he doesn't need anything from anyone else. He's strong because he can think several moves ahead. He's strong because he's willing to make difficult decisions and live with the consequences. So when Si-eun fights back, he does it in ways that completely invert the power dynamic. He doesn't try to outmuscle Yeong-bin. He doesn't try to out-social network him. Instead, he uses the school's own systems against him. He uses other people's fears and insecurities. He uses psychology. He uses information. He uses strategy. And he wins. Not by becoming the strongest, but by making his opponent's strength completely irrelevant. Now, let me talk about what this episode accomplishes from a narrative and thematic perspective. In just 44 minutes, Weak Hero, Class 1 does something remarkable. It completely inverts the standard high school drama formula. It says, forget about romance, forget about sports competitions, forget about art festivals and school dances. This is a show about survival. This is a show about what high school is actually like for students who don't fit into the normal social hierarchy. And it doesn't soften this message. It shows real bullying. It shows real psychological manipulation. It shows real cruelty. It doesn't shy away from the fact that schools can be genuinely dangerous places where the vulnerable get preyed upon. But it also offers something hopeful. It suggests that intelligence and strategy can overcome brute force. It suggests that someone who appears powerless can actually be incredibly powerful if they think differently. It suggests that the traditional markers of strength and weakness are actually reversed, that the people who seem most powerful are often the most fragile, and the people who seem most vulnerable often have hidden reserves of strength. What's also impressive about the character work in this single episode is how much depth it has. We understand Si-eun's isolation and what drives it. We understand that it's not a character flaw so much as a survival mechanism. We understand Yeong-bin's insecurity masquerading as confidence. We understand that his need for dominance comes from a place of actual weakness. We even begin to understand Beom-seok's desperation, his genuine need to belong, and how that need can be weaponized against him. The show doesn't present good guys and bad guys. It presents complicated people with understandable motivations, even when those motivations lead them to do terrible things. Yeong-bin isn't a villain because he's evil. He's a villain because he's insecure, and he's learned that dominating others makes him feel less insecure. Beom-seok isn't a villain because he's bad. He's a pawn in a game where both sides are trying to survive. And then there's the violence. This show is noticeably more brutal than other Korean school dramas. When fights happen, they hurt. They matter. There are consequences. This isn't anime-style combat where people bounce back from massive injuries. This is visceral, ugly, consequence-heavy violence that serves the story. When someone gets hit, you feel the impact. When someone gets hurt, the injury matters. This violence isn't gratuitous. It's thematic. It's saying that the social games being played in this school have real physical consequences. That power dynamics aren't abstract. They're life and death serious. The episode ends with enormous momentum. The chess pieces are positioned. The conflict is clearly established. Si-eun has been challenged. Yeong-bin has made his move. Beom-seok has been recruited. And now we're watching the setup for an escalating conflict that's going to consume the entire season. That opening moment, Si-eun slamming a book into someone's face, suddenly becomes a promise. We're watching the setup. We're waiting to see the payoff. We're waiting to see how far Si-eun is willing to go. We're waiting to see what happens when a cold, calculating student who has nothing to lose decides to fight back. The genius of Weak Hero is that it makes you care about this conflict. It makes you invested in Si-eun's victory. It makes you see Yeong-bin not as an irredeemable villain but as a fascinating study in how insecurity and the need for dominance can warp a person's entire worldview. From this very first episode, the show establishes that it's going to explore themes of power, weakness, strategy, and the hidden strengths that lie dormant in the people we assume are powerless. It establishes that this is going to be a show about a student who wins through intelligence rather than strength. It establishes that this is going to be a show about the real consequences of bullying and the real toll that social hierarchies take on students. And most importantly, it establishes that Yeon Si-eun is not the typical protagonist. He's not going to win through heroic sacrifice or physical prowess. He's going to win through calculation, strategy, and the careful dismantling of the power structures that his enemies have built. So when the second episode begins and we're diving deeper into this conflict, we're already completely hooked. We're already invested in understanding how Si-eun is going to respond. We're already curious about where this story is going to go. That's the power of a truly strong first episode. It doesn't just introduce characters and plot. It reframes what we think a high school drama can be, promises us something different, something more mature, something more psychologically complex. And from the very first scene, from that moment where Si-eun explodes with violence, it keeps that promise. That's the power of a truly strong first episode. It doesn't just introduce characters and plot. It reframes what we think a high school drama can be, promises us something different, something more mature, something more psychologically complex. And from the very first scene, from that moment where Si-eun explodes with violence, it keeps that promise. Weak Hero, Class 1's first episode is a masterclass in establishment. It's efficient in its storytelling. It's compelling in its characterization. It's thematic in its approach. And most importantly, it makes you desperately want to know what happens next. And that's why this show became such a phenomenon when it aired. That's why people binged the entire season in a single sitting. That's why it garnered such critical acclaim. Because from the very first episode, it understands exactly what it's trying to do, and it executes that vision with precision. The first episode of Weak Hero, Class 1 is a perfect example of how to open a series. Not with flashy action sequences or dramatic romantic moments, but with careful character establishment, psychological complexity, and the promise of an interesting conflict between two very different types of people who both think they're about to win a game they don't realize has already started. And when you finish watching that first episode, you're already counting down the minutes until you can start the second one. There's a moment that defines the entire spirit of Weak Hero, Class 1. It happens within the first few minutes of episode 1, and it's absolutely brutal in its simplicity. A student sits at his desk, surrounded by his classmates, minding his own business. But then something happens. Maybe it's a word spoken out of turn. Maybe it's disrespect shown. Maybe it's just the culmination of everything that's been building. Whatever it is, this student, who you'll come to know is the most methodical, controlled, and measured person in his entire school, completely snaps. He picks up a textbook, heavy and solid, and he walks directly toward another student with pure intent. He's going to slam that book into someone's face. And he does. Now, you might think this is your typical hot-headed protagonist moment. You'd be wrong, because the show immediately cuts to 3 days earlier, and we're about to discover that this moment of violence isn't an impulse. It's the result of a carefully orchestrated plan. It's the culmination of psychological warfare, manipulation, social hierarchy breakdown, and calculated strategic thinking. And the protagonist of this story? He's not the strongest fighter in his school. He's not the most popular kid. He's not even close to being a traditional hero. He's actually one of the weakest students in his entire year. But that's exactly the point. Welcome to Weak Hero, Class 1, one of the most interesting Korean dramas to come out in recent memory. And today we're going to break down the entire first episode in detail, because this single 44-minute episode does more character work, world building, and thematic establishment than most shows manage in their entire first season. Let me start by setting the stage. Weak Hero is based on a webtoon, and it's been adapted into a live-action Korean drama that aired in 2022 to significant acclaim. The show isn't interested in the typical high school drama formula. There's no romantic subplot driving the narrative. There's no sports competition or art festival that brings characters together. Instead, weak hero is interested in something far more primal and far more uncomfortable. The brutal social hierarchy of a high school, and what happens when someone figures out how to weaponize intelligence against it. The setting is Byeoksan High School, a standard Korean high school where students are ranked by grades, social status, physical strength, and the complex web of relationships and alliances that determine who has power and who doesn't. It's the kind of school where the strong prey on the weak, where social hierarchies are strictly maintained, and where getting on the wrong person's bad side can have serious consequences. Our protagonist is a student named Yeon Si-eun, and I want you to understand who Si-eun is before we talk about anything else, because his character is the key to understanding everything that happens in this episode. Si-eun is a model student. Not just a good student, a model student. He's consistently at the top of his class rankings. His grades are exceptional. He's the kind of student that every parent wants their kid to be and every teacher appreciates having in their classroom. He follows the rules. He's respectful to authority. He focuses on his studies with absolute dedication. But here's the crucial part. Si-eun has essentially no social life. He has zero friends. He doesn't participate in clubs. He doesn't attend social events. He doesn't engage with the social dynamics of his school at all. His entire world is structured around one thing and one thing only: studying, getting good grades, and securing his future. Everything else is noise to him. Everything else is a distraction. Why is he like this? Well, the episode gives us context clues about his home life. His father is largely absent. His mother is a hagwon teacher, which means she runs a private academy and works constantly. She's rarely home. She's always working. So Si-eun has essentially grown up raising himself. He's become completely self-reliant. He's internalized the belief that the only person he can depend on is himself, and the only thing that matters is securing his own future through academic achievement. This creates a very specific psychological profile. Si-eun doesn't view his classmates as potential friends or social connections. He views them as distractions, as obstacles between him and his goal. He treats them with complete and utter indifference. If they want to talk to him, he politely asks them to leave him alone. If they want his attention, they won't get it. He's closed off. He's isolated. He's created a protective wall around himself that's designed to keep the world at arm's length. Now, you might think this strategy would make Si-eun safe. That by not participating in the school's social dynamics, by not engaging with the power structures and the drama and the hierarchies, he could somehow avoid trouble. He could just graduate, go to college, and move on with his life. That makes logical sense. But it doesn't work that way. Because Si-eun has just made an enemy. There's a student in his class named Jeon Yeong-bin. Yeong-bin is the complete opposite of Si-eun in almost every meaningful way. Yeong-bin is social. He's connected. He has friends and allies. He's physically strong. He's confident. And most importantly, he's a bully. Not a casual bully who picks on people occasionally. A full-time, dedicated bully who feeds on power and dominance the way normal people feed on food. For someone like Yeong-bin, bullying isn't just something he does. It's who he is. It's his entire identity. He needs other people to acknowledge his power. He needs them to fear him. He needs them to respect him. It's an addiction. It's a psychological need that drives everything he does. So when Yeong-bin encounters Yeon Si-eun, the skinny, weak-looking nerd who sits alone at his desk and completely ignores everyone around him, something inside Yeong-bin breaks, because Si-eun is committing the ultimate sin in Yeong-bin's worldview. He's not just ignoring Yeong-bin. He's not acknowledging his existence at all. To Yeong-bin, Si-eun is basically saying that he's so insignificant, so unimportant, that he doesn't even deserve basic acknowledgement. He doesn't deserve fear. He doesn't deserve respect. He deserves nothing. This is unbearable to Yeong-bin. His entire sense of self is wrapped up in being feared and respected, and Si-eun is stripping that away by simply not caring. So Yeong-bin makes a decision. He's going to confront Si-eun. He's going to establish dominance. He's going to make Si-eun acknowledge his power. But here's where we see the first hint that Si-eun isn't actually defenseless. Because when Yeong-bin approaches Si-eun to pick a fight, someone steps in and stops him. The student's name is Yeon Si-eun. Si-eun is one of the strongest fighters in the school. He's physically powerful. He's respected. And for reasons that aren't immediately clear, he intervenes on Si-eun's behalf and de-escalates the situation. Now, this is Si-eun's first piece of luck. But luck is a fragile thing, and Yeong-bin is not the type of person to accept defeat so easily. Being stopped by Si-eun has only humiliated him further. Being denied his victory over Si-eun is infuriating. So Yeong-bin does something that reveals his true nature. He doesn't try to confront Si-eun again directly. Instead, he's going to find an indirect way. He's going to use someone else.